For 5 years, my parents forgot to invite me to Christmas. Not loudly, not cruelly, just enough that I kept questioning myself until the silence became louder than any argument we'd never had. If you've ever been quietly erased by family, subscribe to the channel. These stories aren't revenge fantasies, they're reflections you can't unsee. The first year it happened, I didn't think much of it. That's important. People always assume betrayal announces itself. It doesn't. It arrives dressed like inconvenience, miscommunication, bad timing. It arrives softly, so you don't flinch. I was 26 then, living on my own, working long hours, doing that thing adults do, where they pretend independence doesn't still ache sometimes. Christmas was 2 weeks away when I called my mom to ask what time dinner would be. There was a pause on the line, a small one, barely noticeable. "Oh," she said, "we thought you were working." I looked at my calendar. Empty. I always kept Christmas clear. "I'm not," I said carefully. Another pause, then lighter this time. "Well, we already booked the lodge." The lodge. Her tone shifted when she said it, like she was saying something obvious, something I should already know. It wasn't an invitation, it was information. "Okay," I said, because that's what I always said. "Have fun." After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen staring at nothing, waiting for the delayed realization to hit. It didn't. Just a mild confusion. A quiet question. Did I miss something? I didn't bring it up again. I told myself adulthood meant flexibility. Families changed, traditions evolved. That year, I ate Chinese takeout alone and watched a movie I barely remember. It felt temporary, like a glitch. The second year, I reminded them early. "Let me know what the plan is for Christmas," I said casually in November. My dad smiled and nodded. Yeah. They never let me know. By mid-December, the lodge photos started appearing online. Same place, same long table, same fireplace. My parents surrounded by siblings, cousins, noise. I zoomed in like an idiot, searching for an empty chair that might have been meant for me. There wasn't one. When I asked my mom afterward, she frowned like I'd accused her of something unreasonable. "We didn't think you'd want to come all the way out. You've got your own life now." That sentence lodged itself somewhere deep in my chest. My own life, said like an explanation, said like a boundary I hadn't agreed to. The third year was worse, not because of what happened, but because of how normal it felt. No reminder, no question, just an assumption that I wasn't included. I noticed the shift in myself before I noticed it in them. I stopped checking my phone as Christmas approached, stopped making space for something that clearly wasn't coming. Still, a part of me held on. A stupid, loyal part, the kind that wants to believe love is just clumsy, not selective. That year, I asked my sister if she knew the plan. She hesitated, just for a second. "Oh," she said, "I thought you knew." "Knew what?" I didn't push. I never pushed. I told myself pushing would make it awkward, that I didn't want pity invites. By the fourth year, the explanations grew thinner. "We assumed you were busy. We didn't want to pressure you. You never said you wanted to come." Each sentence slid the responsibility neatly onto me. And the worst part, I accepted it. I replayed conversations in my head, looking for where I'd failed to express desire loudly enough. I wondered if wanting to be included was childish, needy. I started telling friends I preferred quiet holidays. I said it with a smile until it almost felt true. Almost. The lodge became a symbol I didn't want but couldn't ignore. Every year, same dates, same ritual, same exclusion. I finally visited it once, months later, for a work event. I hadn't planned to. I didn't even realize where I was until I walked into the main hall. My stomach dropped. It was exactly how I'd imagined it. Warm lighting, wood beams, that fireplace my father loved to stand in front of like it was proof of something. Standing there alone, surrounded by echoes of a family version I didn't belong to, something shifted. Not anger, not yet, just awareness. The fifth year, my mother called me in late November. "We booked the lodge," she said cheerfully, "December 23rd through 26th. She waited. I could hear it, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. "You probably have plans," she added. That was the moment. Not dramatic, no explosion, just the quiet, unmistakable realization that this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a choice. I said, probably, and meant something entirely different than she heard. because for the first time in 5 years, I stopped asking myself what I'd done wrong and started wondering what would happen if I stopped being the one left out. By the time the 5th Christmas passed, the damage wasn't loud anymore. It was structural. It lived in the way I hesitated before calling home, in how my shoulders tensed when my mother's name lit up my phone, in how I edited myself before I even spoke. That's how you know something's wrong. You start preparing for hurt before it happens. January came and went. No follow-up call. No, we missed you. No awkward apology wrapped in humor. Just silence, smooth and unbroken, like nothing had happened at all. I tried to match it. I told myself this was adulthood, distance, independence. I told myself families weren't obligated to include you forever. But then came the small things, the things you can't unsee once they stack. My sister sent a group photo in February, not even on purpose, just a casual drop in the family chat. Everyone was standing outside the lodge, bundled up, smiling like it was still December. Someone replied, "Best Christmas ever." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. No one noticed I hadn't reacted. In March, my father mentioned upgrading our room at the lodge for next year. Our. The word slid out naturally, like a habit he'd never questioned. I was sitting across from him at a diner, sunlight glinting off his coffee mug. I realized he wasn't being cruel, he just wasn't thinking of me at all. That hurt more than cruelty ever could. I started testing the edges then. Small questions, careful phrasing. "So, what are you guys thinking for Christmas this year?" I asked my mom one afternoon in July. She laughed lightly. "Oh, you're thinking way ahead." "I know," I said. "Just curious." "Well," she said slowly, "you're so busy, we don't want to assume." There it was again, the soft blame, the gentle erasure. I nodded, like it made sense, like it didn't scrape something raw inside me. Later that week, my sister called. "You okay?" she asked, too casually. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" She hesitated, that pause again, the same one she'd had years ago. "You've seemed distant." I almost laughed, almost asked if she noticed the irony. Instead, I said, "I guess I am." She exhaled. "You know Mom and Dad don't mean anything by it." "By what?" I asked. She went quiet. "That I'm not there," I said carefully, "or that no one ever checks if I want to be?" "That's not fair," she said quickly, too quickly, defensive. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "So you have noticed." Silence stretched between us. "It's just easier this way," she said finally. Easier. That word hit harder than I expected. Easier for who? I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I hung up and sat on my couch, hands clenched, staring at the wall like it might explain something. That was the moment I stopped calling it a misunderstanding, because misunderstandings don't get defended. From then on, the behavior shifted, subtly but noticeably. My mother stopped volunteering information. Conversations became surface level, polite, almost professional, like we were distant relatives instead of family. My father joked more when I was around, like humor could cover discomfort, like if he stayed loud enough, we wouldn't talk about the quiet. And my siblings? They stayed neutral, which I learned is its own kind of choice. The lodge came up constantly. Renovations, events, bookings. It was the gravitational center of their lives, and I orbited outside it. I started to feel like a guest in my own family, welcome in theory, inconvenient in practice. One afternoon in early fall, my mom mentioned they were considering prepaying for Christmas this year, before prices go up. My chest tightened. "Oh," I said. "Already?" She paused. "Well, yes. I didn't ask me," I said, not accusing, just stating a fact. Another pause, longer this time. "We didn't think—" "I know," I cut in gently. "You didn't think." The line went quiet. "I don't like this tone," she said finally. I laughed, sharp and humorless. "I don't like being erased." That word, erased, it hung between us like something dangerous. "We've done nothing wrong," she said, voice cooling. "You're an adult. You can make your own plans." "And you can keep pretending I don't exist during the holidays?" I asked. "That's not fair," she snapped. There it was, not sadness, not guilt, anger. The call ended shortly after. I sat there afterwards shaking, not with rage, but with the delayed realization that this wasn't accidental. It was defended, protected. That's when the loyalty finally cracked. I stopped trying to explain myself, stopped adjusting expectations, stopped performing understanding. Instead, I started observing, and what I saw was clear. I was convenient to forget. The lodge listing appeared 2 weeks later. I stared at it like the universe had placed it deliberately in my path, not as temptation, but as a question. What are you going to do with what you know now? I visited the property under the guise of professional interest. I asked questions. I listened. I walked the halls slowly, touching door frames my parents had leaned against in photos. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like alignment. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to them. I was choosing something for myself. The numbers made sense. The timing made sense. Even the fear made sense. What didn't make sense anymore was continuing to accept a role I never agreed to play. By the time December rolled around, my parents had already booked again. Same dates, same room. They didn't tell me. I found out through a forwarded email my sister sent by mistake. She apologized immediately, said it wasn't intentional. I believed her, and still I didn't unsee it. That night, I signed the final paperwork. Ownership didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet, heavy, permanent, like closing a door I'd been holding open with bleeding hands. When my mother called later that week to mention Christmas casually, like it was weather, I let her talk. When she paused, waiting for my response, I gave her the same energy she'd given me for 5 years. "Sounds nice," I said, and for the first time, the silence on the line didn't belong to me.
The week before Christmas always smells like denial. Cinnamon everywhere. Artificial pine. That sugary heaviness that tries to convince you warmth is the same thing as love. I noticed it more that year. Maybe because I wasn't numb anymore. Maybe because once you see the pattern, your body reacts before your brain catches up. I didn't tell them I knew. That was the strange part. I carried the knowledge quietly, like a secret that weighed more than it should have. My parents moved through December the way they always did. Busy, cheerful, wrapped up in plans that didn't include me. If they felt guilt, they buried it well. My sister tried to compensate. She called more, asked surface questions, sent memes. It felt like she was building noise to avoid silence. "Are you coming by before Christmas?" she asked one afternoon. "I don't know," I said honestly. She hesitated. "You could, just for a bit." Just for a bit, like I was a visitor, a side quest. "Are Mom and Dad expecting me?" I asked. Another pause, longer this time. "I'll ask," she said. She never did. The night before Christmas Eve, my mom called. Her voice was light, almost rehearsed. "Just checking in, making sure you're okay." I pictured her packing, folding sweaters into a suitcase that already felt full without me. "I'm fine," I said. "You sound tired." I laughed softly. "I am." She filled the space with chatter. Weather, traffic, how nice the lodge would look with the snow. She talked like if she kept going, nothing uncomfortable would surface. Finally, she paused. "So, what are you doing for Christmas?" There it was. Not an invitation, a question meant to absolve. "I'm working," I said. A lie. A simple one. "Oh," she said, relieved. "That's good then." Good. I ended the call with my hands shaking, not because I wanted to scream, but because I didn't, because the part of me that used to ache had gone quiet. Christmas Eve came cold and gray. I drove out of the city early, telling myself it was just business, just logistics, just curiosity. The lodge sat exactly where it always had, nestled into the woods like it belonged there more than I ever had. Cars filled the lot, familiar ones, my father's, my sister's. I sat in my car longer than necessary, engine off, watching people move in and out through the glass doors, laughing, carrying bags, existing without me. That was the moment grief finally stopped being theoretical. I walked in through the side entrance. No one noticed me at first. Staff moved around with purpose. The air buzzed with holiday energy, clinking glasses, low music, murmured conversations layered over each other. Then I saw them. My parents stood near the fireplace, exactly like the photos. My father's hands on his hips, my mother smiling, relaxed, in her element. My siblings nearby, laughing about something small and unimportant. They looked complete. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not cleanly, more like a fracture spreading under pressure. I didn't interrupt. I watched. I watched my mother adjust my sister's scarf, watched my father clap someone on the shoulder, watched how easy it all looked when I wasn't part of the equation. Then my mother saw me. Her smile faltered, not in shock, but confusion, like she was trying to place an object that didn't belong in the room. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Not, "I'm glad to see you," not, "You came." Just that. "I was nearby," I said. My voice sounded steady. That surprised me. My father stepped closer, brow furrowed. "Why didn't you say anything?" I almost laughed. The audacity of it. The rewriting.
I didn't know I needed to, I said. My sister looked between us, face tight. This is awkward, she murmured. It was more than awkward. It was exposed. We assumed you were working, my mother said quickly, like she was reaching for a life raft. No, I said. You hoped I was. The words landed heavier than I expected. My father's jaw tightened. That's not fair, he said. I nodded slowly. You've said that before. The air around us thickened. Conversations nearby dulled. People sensed tension the way animals do, instinctively. Let's not do this here, my mother said. Where should we do it? Because we've avoided it everywhere else. Silence. 5 years collapsed into that moment. Every excuse, every omission, every time I told myself I was overreacting. I wanted to understand, I said, and meant it. Why was I never invited? My mother looked away. My father sighed, rubbing his face. It just happened. No, I said quietly. It didn't. My sister shifted, uncomfortable. Do we really need to get into this? Yes, I said. I do. My mother's voice hardened. You're making this bigger than it is. That was it. That was the sentence that finally broke something inside me. Because it wasn't confusion anymore, or carelessness. It was dismissal. I felt the grief crest then, not sharp, not explosive, but overwhelming, like standing in the ocean and realizing the water was already over your head. I spent 5 years wondering what was wrong with me, I said. My voice wavered now. I didn't fight it. 5 years thinking I was too much, or not enough. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? My mother crossed her arms, defensive. We never told you not to come. I never told you to, and that difference matters. People were staring now. I didn't care. My father looked tired, older than I remembered. What do you want from us? He asked. The question stunned me. What did I want? An apology? An explanation? To be chosen? I realized then, too late maybe, that there was nothing they could offer me that would undo the damage. Nothing that would give me back the version of myself that still believed family inclusion was automatic. I wanted to belong, I said simply. My mother's face softened for a second, just a flicker. Then it closed again. We did our best, she said. That was the final lie. I nodded slowly. Okay. And just like that, something shifted. Not rage, not forgiveness. Acceptance. I turned to leave. Wait, my sister said, reaching out. I stepped back. Don't. They watched me go. I didn't look back. Outside, the cold hit hard. Clean. Honest. I stood there for a long time, breathing in air that didn't ask anything of me. That night, alone in my apartment, I cried not because I'd lost them, but because I'd finally stopped trying to earn something they'd never intended to give. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I said, let's finalize everything. And for the first time since this started, my voice didn't shake.
Ownership doesn't feel the way people think it does. It's not power in your chest or fireworks behind your eyes. It's stillness. It's walking into a place that once made you feel small and realizing it no longer has that authority over you. I finalized the purchase 3 days after Christmas. No announcement, no warning. I didn't want spectacle. I wanted truth to arrive the same way the damage had. Calm, unavoidable, and late. The first thing I did was meet with the staff, same faces my parents had smiled at for years, same people who had watched me hover at the edges of photos I was never in. I kept everyone, gave raises, renewed contracts. Stability matters when you're changing the rules. Then I waited. My mother called in early January. We left something at the lodge, she said. One of the sweaters. Could you call the front desk for us? I almost laughed at the muscle memory of it, how easily she assumed access. I'll handle it, I said. She didn't hear the difference. 2 weeks later, my father emailed. Short, polite. He wanted to reserve the lodge again for Christmas. Same dates, same room. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. The lodge is no longer available for family bookings during the holidays. I didn't explain. I didn't soften it. His response came quickly. What do you mean unavailable? We've been going there for years. I waited a full day before answering. Ownership changed. That's when my phone rang. You bought it? My mother asked, disbelief cracking her voice. Yes. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, shallow and fast. You did this on purpose, she said.
I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. So did you. My father took the phone then. His voice was tight. This is childish. No, I said calmly. This is boundaries. You're punishing us, he snapped. I thought about the years I sat alone, convincing myself I was overreacting, the quiet shame, the self-doubt. No, I said, I'm opting out. They didn't understand that. People rarely do when consequences arrive without yelling. My sister called later, crying, "You didn't have to do this." I didn't have to survive 5 years of being erased either, I replied. That ended the conversation. By February, word had spread, not dramatically, just enough. Extended family reached out confused, some defensive, some suddenly curious. I told the truth, calmly, without exaggeration. Some apologized, most went quiet. Silence, I learned, is the preferred language of people who don't want to choose sides. Spring came, the lodge thrived, weddings, retreats. Life went on without my parents at the center of it. They stopped calling. That hurt less than I expected, because something strange happened in the space they left behind. Peace. The next December, I spent Christmas at the lodge, alone but not lonely. I lit the fireplace myself, ate dinner at the long table by choice, not exclusion. I sat in the chair I imagined had once been mine and felt nothing sharp about it, just ownership. That night, I checked my phone. A message from my mother. We didn't realize what we were doing until it was too late. I read it twice, then once more. I didn't reply, because understanding after the damage isn't repair, it's regret. And regret doesn't rebuild what neglect dismantled piece by piece. They lost access to the place they loved most, but that wasn't the real loss. They lost me when they decided my absence was easier than my presence, and by the time they noticed, I was no longer asking to belong. I closed the lodge for the night, turned out the lights, and walked upstairs to the office. For the first time in years, Christmas didn't feel like something I'd been excluded from. It felt like something I had finally reclaimed.